So today we are discussing with Dr. Andreev and Daniel Pollak their recent lab protocol article in PLOS ONE, First Steps into the Cloud, using Amazon data storage and computing with Python notebooks and the associated protocol in protocols.io. Dr. Andreev is a postdoc at Caltech, working across disciplines and applying costume fluorescence microscopy to understand how sleep-regulating neural circuits shape brain activity and help sleep emerge. Andrey and his colleagues combine costume hardware development with advanced data processing techniques to answer critical questions about the emergence of sleep behavior using zebrafish as a model system. Andrey did his PhD at the University of Southern California and was interested not only in solving engineering problems, but also in disseminating technical knowledge and helping students and other researchers develop technical skill sets. His protocol in protocols.io is one example of that effort. Daniel Pollak is a neurobiology PhD student in Lamarcus Meister's lab at Caltech, where he is studying early visual processing during natural behavior in mice. Dan worked with Andrey during his rotation in the Prover lab, also at Caltech. So Andrey and Daniel, thank you so much for being with us here.
Thanks for
having us.
So to kick off, if you can briefly explain what this protocol is about, how to use it, and why it's relevant.
So if I may start, the basic idea that we had when we were developing this protocol is that there's a lot of interest in cloud computing, and there's a lot of interest in offloading some of the big data processing to the cloud from the personal workstations. But what I have found personally in my experience with cloud, it's really esoteric. People require very esoteric knowledge to do that, right? It's a skill set that you don't really apply anywhere else outside of this cloud infrastructure. So it's not something you can develop and then carry with you all your life and use it all the time. In my personal experience, every year or every 2 years, I have to do something in AWS, and I have to basically relearn everything again because I forgot what I knew previously, right? And so our main goal, frankly, was self-serving, right? We were trying to write down this very specific, very esoteric technical knowledge down so that it's going to be easier for us next time to use it, but also to make it a little bit less complicated for other people and a little bit less scary to other people to get into this, to the cloud data processing kind of waters. That's our main goal, right? To kind of make things less scary for others and just preserve this knowledge that's really you can't kind of maintain constantly.
And to understand the relevance, can you help us also understand what was the state of the art when you decided to engage in terms of, was there any other guidelines that will help achieve what you're saying, translating into common language, this esoteric knowledge? And if so, if there was something out there already published, why that wasn't working for you and you decided to optimize this protocol?
I think Daniel actually did a bit of kind of literature search for this work. My opinion when we were looking at that stuff is that there was a lot of opinion kind of pieces and very general articles that just say that there's this cloud and it's fast and it's easy to use. Go figure it out yourself. And so we decided to do it from very you probably know what it is, but here exactly how to do that, right? So our protocol is really aiming to be this lab protocol, right? When how to log in, how to set up security, how a lot of screenshots of what exactly you're going to see when you're going to get into this infrastructure, right? And a little bit of general words about what you should do, what you should think about, but mostly just very concrete example of walking through this whole process rather than giving very general overview.
Yeah, maybe to add to that, it seems like yeah, like Andre said, this has been publicized as a technology that is just sort of there and available, but it's kind of geared toward people working at a software company. Um, but biologists and scientists in general are by nature kind of hackers. They hack stuff together, and to do that effectively, you just need one good example of how to go from raw data to like something you could plot. And it turns out we figured out how to do all that stuff with this technology. So um, a scientist may not even think to try this because it may not be obvious to them that they could do that. So this is just sort of one example of how to do it, and then they can go and tweak things along each step as they like, and do what they need.
And you developed the protocol starting with an interest in helping yourself down the road, when you had to revisit it, but also you wanted to share it with your colleagues, it seems to me, from the beginning, as an original idea. But why did you decide to get the protocol peer-reviewed and published as an index traditional paper in a journal?
The first, I think, reason is that we see a lot of people publishing, code on GitHub or blogs and things like that, very informal kind of ways to do that. And there is two problems with that. I mean, first of all, it's great that people put stuff on the internet and in public access, no matter the way they do that. But for us, it was very important to have something that's preserved for a long time and that carries a bit of the weight, of the community, right? So it's not just something that we put together over the weekend and now we let other people use. We actually wanted to run it through the community review and make it a part of the larger ecosystem from the social kind of standpoint, if that makes sense, right? We wanted to be part of the bigger kind of organization, to put, first of all, more pressure on us to make it good and make it actually useful, right? And second of all, to increase visibility, frankly, right? And again, Daniel here is a student, and so he is learning how to write these things and how to be part of this community. So it also was for us an opportunity to kind of practice this and do public science the way it's actually done.
And can you share with us what or how the feedback that you received from the peer reviewers shaped the final version of the protocol and the paper, obviously?
I think it was I think just the fact that you're gonna face peer review puts a lot of kind of positive pressure on you to do it well. There was a lot of comments that made it, I think, more, we clarified a lot of language. So a lot of things that, in the trenches, sort of you think are clear and obvious, but really for, our target audience are not. I don't know if Daniel can bring something up. I think there was also, what came from the review clear is that there was maybe some sort of, we narrowed scope of our kind of effort. We had to clarify somewhere that, we are talking about Amazon here, but it's, we're not here to promote anything. So like we kind of had to make it a little bit clear what exactly we're doing. So just, positive experience of clarifying things and making them more useful for the audience.
Yeah. From my experience with it, I remember just like concretely the reviewers definitely wanted one or two more screenshots in the protocol, just holding the hands of people as they walked through the actual thing that they had to do. And then for the manuscript, I think they wanted us to also kind of give a clearer vision. Yeah, I mean, in addition to like, showing that we're not like just shills for Amazon, they wanted us to sort of articulate what the possible benefit of this to the community would be. And I think we, obviously that's what we intended to do initially, but having that kind of feedback go into our second revision, I think it allowed us to really kind of focus in on what we really wanted to convey with this manuscript, which, I hope people read, but what I hope more is people who want to do some new exciting analyses now can do that.
And what was the motivation or rationale for you to make the peer review history public?
Was that your decision, Andrey?
I don't think it was actually like I don't think it was actually like a conscious sort of decision. It felt like a kind of normal thing to do. I think at the same time when we were finishing this, eLife kind of was changing their model. So it was a, an example of how maybe future will look like. So we kind of just, that makes sense. Like, I don't see why we wouldn't do that. It kind of came, I don't remember there was actually a conversation about this or like any hesitation.
Yeah, and I think like I understood also earlier that like it encourages you, like you said, positive pressure to do well. And this is just another example of that. We felt good about all of our efforts so far. And I mean it's kind of a protocol in and of itself. This is how you respond to reviewers. Why wouldn't you include that in the final product?
Yeah.
And now if we can delve a little bit more on the protocol itself, what will your advice be for the users in terms of the most critical steps of the protocol? Where people really have to pay attention?
Want to take this one, Daniel? Or you want a
Sure.
second pull it up?
I have some thoughts. I'm not sure what the most important part is. I mean, for me, the absolute most important thing to take away from this is the fact that this is not like you get a quote from a company and you pay an amount. This is kind of Andrei's spiel, so I'm sorry if I'm taking it, but it's important because this is a pay-as-you-go. It's a different kind of system from what scientists usually use, and what that has resulted in not only in scientists but also I've heard of students doing this by accident here at Caltech. You accidentally pay for way more than you needed because you didn't basically turn off your computing instance, and then you just leave it on overnight, like for a night or for a month or for a year, and then you come back and you're like, oh my gosh, I owe Amazon hundreds or thousands of dollars. So the most important thing, I just want people to like, if they're watching this, the one thing I want them to take away from this whole interview is please make sure you turn off your instances and make sure you have a fairly clear understanding of how the money you're spending is actually coming out of your pocket, because it is actively sort of minute by minute leaving your pocket. It's not coming in one chunk.
Yeah, that's very important kind of issue which we highlighted, I think, in a couple places of the protocol is that, yeah, as Daniel said, you're not paying for like a server, right? That's the main difference. You're not buying a box that's going to sit under your desk forever and do your data crunching. I mean, that's kind of good thing and bad thing. And the main thing is that, yeah, there's horror stories about people just getting overcharged for no reason, or because they forgot to do something, or because they spawned, tens of thousands computing instances overnight by accident. So, with great power comes great responsibility, right? This flexibility of cloud also comes with the cost of keeping track of your spending, setting budget. In our protocol, which I don't know, you don't really see this discussion, but our protocol have a section on how to set up budgeting tools in Amazon infrastructure, right? Which is like really strange for this computational oriented protocol, but it is integral part of understanding how the system work. I think the security also notes are important because it is not, again, it's a different type of environment that you work with. But the kind of what if there's something critical that we would like to take people out of this is that if you go past that budgeting and security and network kind of setup section, you're just jumping into a very comfortable world of Python and Jupyter notebook world, right? So it's really, if you know how to do that and you can get past this first initial setup part, you're in a pretty cozy kind of place with a large amount of resources available to you, and it's not scary. And like that's again the main outcome that we would like people to get out of this, is that emotional outcome, is that it's not scary, it's not unfamiliar, it's not weird, it's just a little bit different. But you get to the same type of computing environment as you probably used to as a person with computational skill already.
And maybe I can also just add, I think part of our intent for that section with the Python and Julia code is to, it's to present something to people who have coded before that they'll recognize. But hopefully, I hope we commented things in a way that is meaningful. If you're new to data analysis, using code for data analysis, so we strongly believe that code is the way to, like scripting is the way to do data analysis as opposed to using macros in Excel, because it's reproducible. This is the whole name of the game. And unfortunately, a lot of amazing biologists don't necessarily get the background in that. So this is not supposed to replace any kind of like, introduction to Python, but I hope that someone who's new to this kind of to coding as well will see this and say, oh, okay, I understand how each of these steps that they're showing actually goes from raw data to a graph. And what biologists care about in the end is like a graph. And here's what we do is get you to a graph. So, hopefully that's accessible for people who are less technically experienced yet.
Now, when you were putting together this protocol, was there any troubleshooting? Anything that you tried? I'm not sure that it will apply to this sort of protocol, but is there were there things that you tried and didn't work? Not only in the way that you communicated, you have said you received feedback from the reviewer saying like, oh, you could potentially clarify this part, but in the core of the protocol itself.
I think we spent some time on kind of making, and knowing that this is going to go into hands of people who are maybe less technical, who obviously like less familiar with infrastructure. We did spend extra time on revising the kind of security, budgeting, that kind of tools that are really unfamiliar, right? And so we try to make it better. And there's flexibility in setting up these things. And so we went through a couple of iterations of making it more secure, kind of giving the recommendations that are sort of above baseline, and hopefully provided with extra assurances to the end user in that like there are going to be no issues. I think that was a major one. Anything else comes to mind, Daniel?
Well, yeah, I think so. Obviously, the most important troubleshooting and iteration was done by you, Andrey, on the administrative side and just getting all this stuff to work and getting the box ready. But then once you take stuff out of the box, you have to start using these Python interfaces for AWS services. And this is another one of those things that I think the documentation for like Boto 3 and S3 and these are ways of making various Python services communicate with each other, and they're not actually sort of marketed as being sort of interoperable. It's an overwhelming ecosystem of just a ton of services that you just have to kind of learn from scratch. And it is, again, sort of geared towards, I think, engineers, not scientists. And so even the documentation for like getting this thing that allows you to get large amounts of data into your Jupyter notebook called Boto 3, we had to like just sort of play around for a while and sort of figure out what is it that this is actually doing? How do you actually download data onto your instance and so on? So that wasn't as onerous, to be honest. I think we were all a bit sort of used to coding enough that took us a lot less time than it would have for like a naive coder. But yeah, I think that was also like a non-trivial thing.
Again, now from the details of the protocol itself, I don't know if you can tell us what has been the significance of getting the protocol and the paper out for you both young scientists at different stages of your career.
For me, it was just sort of another example of my kind of effort to disseminate this very technical knowledge, very specific kind of things in a format that's can be preserved for a long time, and also an experience of committing to this, making something very technical, also try to explain it very well, and provide some tools for other people. And my main kind of feeling, and that's one of the reasons we started doing this, is that now we have something concrete that we can show to others and make them more comfortable with technology, but also a conversation starter. Right now we have something we can discuss with other people when they bring up cloud or whatever, because in part the challenge with cloud is that it's relatively new, especially in academic circles. So there's a lot of unknown, or what's the correct word? There's not a lot of experience with that. And so people have a lot of opinions without actual, knowledge sometimes. And by having this protocol put together and commentary published, I hope that we can kind of use it as a conversation starter and, prove that we actually know what we're talking about and we can contribute to the conversation meaningfully. That's important for me, to have this concrete nugget, concrete scientific artifact.
For me, so as Andrei said, I'm newer to academia and I'm learning my place and how to contribute to it and how to take from it. And one thing that became really clear is that like there's a clear trade-off in like and maybe I should back up. As scientists, the first thing that we're told is that science is for good and it's for sharing and it's for everyone. Certain, you know, publishing houses and journals don't believe that. They believe you should pay, but I think all scientists everywhere believe that science should be for everyone. And this was an exercise in living that out. And I'm really glad we did it. One thing that I learned, one thing I took away from it, is that taking the time to do this, to write out a protocol and a manuscript, is very rewarding and it makes you think about it deeply and understand it deeply. But it's also a trade-off because it's not actually like sort of the kind of thing that's going to get me to graduate. This is, I need to have a first author paper about like a scientific story. And so there's a trade-off in like living out these ideals and also doing the thing that allows you to survive and keep your head above water in academia, which is just cutthroat. And at the end of it, like so what I am thinking is like, so what would lead me to do this again? And at the beginning, this wasn't as like explicitly clear to me, but I think this is a truly unique, or I believe it could be a really worthwhile thing. And I'm not convinced that actually biologists will, in the end up using cloud for anything. Maybe some people will. I know a lot of people at Caltech do, but I don't know if it'll take off. But if there is a need that this could be filling, and I didn't write this, I would regret it. And I think that's a unique kind of thing that'll sort of be my my North Star in terms of when I publish something like this again.
Thank you so much for sharing. This is very personal. And before we wrap up, is there anything that you would like to mention that we haven't touched in the conversation?
I think since part of this interview is to going to be public and we're doing this for others as well, right? I think it's just a good reminder that there's an outlet, Protocols.io in collaboration with +One, that really provide an opportunity to share what you know to a wider audience. And as a person who is in this technical field, to talk to a lot of users of tools, there's a lot of people with the same problems you're having, right? And I'm talking to the viewers of this. There's a lot of people with the same exact challenges. And if you can find time, find energy to write your solutions to the problem down and find an outlet to share the solutions with people, people will be grateful. And it will solve a bit of this academic kind of research pains. I truly believe that. And I've seen it across different fields, computational, hardware, biology as well. A lot of people are going through the same things you, the viewer, are going through. And so I encourage to try to share more technical details about our experiments, and Protocols.io is definitely one of maybe unique kind of platform for that.
Dan, something to add?
I really like what Andrei said about the importance of sharing it. Sometimes in my head, when I figure something out for the first time in my lab, there's sort of a zero-sum game that runs in the background that says, "Oh, I know this. By knowing this, I'm ahead of other people, and I should keep this to myself." And I think that's and I can only speak for myself, but that would not be a good ethos to propagate through academia or anywhere, frankly. So yeah, I think one of the things that we kind of have to wrap our minds around as academics is that this act of communal sharing is actually reciprocal because you obviously stand to benefit from others doing the same. even though it's kind of hard to project out into the months or years, at which point, you know, someone who's read your article will write an article that you will read, and you will both be benefited by that. There aren't a lot of articulations of that in academia. It's implicit, but it's rarely sort of spoken. So yeah, as Andrey said, I hope people sort of push back against the zero-sumness of academia the way it is now, and try to do good for as many people as possible by sharing.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, both about the protocols and about your careers and the intersection between these two. I know you're busy, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think it was great also for us to kind of reflect and think about this again, and think about maybe next project.
Absolutely.